So we began 2022 with about 50% of our organ pipes working. And the remaining pipes had given us fair warning that they were on their way out, and we had significant leaks in our church roof. Our two main furnaces had each reached the end of their useful lives, and the chapel windows were visibly buckling and popping out panes and bending in and out in the winds and dropping pieces of glass on the chapel floor. And these were daunting beginnings, but our community at Emmanuel was like Jeremiah's tree planted by the water. We sent out our roots by the living stream of the community, and we worked together to find solutions that were achievable for us in our context. Randy had only been with us several weeks when, through his own expertise and his relationships with organ builders, he helped us find an organ that was affordable for us, fully paid for from the Parker Organ Fund, with money left over for unexpected repairs. We deepened our relationship with the Alida Morris McBean Foundation and with the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, submitting grant applications that described our hopes for Emmanuel's flourishing as a community center open to all people at all times, in all seasons. And we asked specifically for their assistance in the resealing of the rubber membrane roof over the nave, the repair of the chapel windows, and the rebuilding of our heating and ventilation systems. Then we prayed our way through Lent, thinking about our halos, those clouds of good intentions we have for ourselves and our community. And we asked ourselves, you probably remember these. I have one here on my desk that I actually found later, and I will weave into our altar cloth. We prayed our way through Lent, thinking about how we can show our halos to each other and to the wider community, whether that's by smiling, welcoming others, inviting them to join us at Emmanuel, expanding our service through Soups On and Newport Classical's chamber concerts. And each Sunday during Lent, we wrote our halo prayers on those satin ribbons, and we used them to weave into an altar cloth for Eastertide. And those ribbons were in all different colors and lengths and textures and thicknesses, kind of like us at Emmanuel. And yet we were all woven into the fabric of our community. During Eastertide, we received the good news that Van Buren and McBean would fund our urgent repairs to the church roof, the chapel stained glass windows, and the heating and ventilation systems for the church. And then McBean urged us to also get bids for air conditioning for the large public spaces like the recital hall, the library, the nave, and the chapel, to better support our vision of welcoming all people at all times and all seasons. And we expanded our community at home and also reached out into the wider community to form new relationships. We completed our first full year of space collaboration with Newport Classical, which is not a rental or a tenancy, but a shared future in the community. Now settled into a space that allows storage and offices and an acoustically rich year-round concert space, Newport Classical held its first full year of chamber concerts in the recital hall at Emmanuel Church in its first festival season this past summer, allowing them to share almost $35,000 towards our operating expenses at Emmanuel, and also becoming an essential part, a living part of our community here. Together, we agreed to be the major rehearsal site for Newport Folk Festival, and we had a glorious week of seeing the recital hall and the library just alive with music. Also, there's no written proof anywhere that Joni Mitchell herself, the surprise special guest, didn't rehearse at Emmanuel prior to her first public appearance in over 20 years. At least that's what I told everyone I saw at the Lambeth conference in England just days later, as the whole world was buzzing about Joni Mitchell's surprise appearance. I was a minor celebrity among all of the bishops at Lambeth, at least the Western ones. They kept asking me, did you see her? And I'd say, well, no, but I wasn't there late at night. They must have rehearsed late at night. they get these faraway looks, like remembering their college days in the 1970s. They say, oh, I can't even believe that she came back and she was at Emmanuel Church. I'm confident that's why Mark Eddington showed up to preach for us November 6th. There are improvements that Newport Classical and we will make this summer in communications and cleanup and supervision for that. But having Newport folk rehearse at Emmanuel was just too marvelous an opportunity for us to miss. We also shared Emmanuel's amazing acoustic spaces with other music groups for rehearsal and recital, fulfilling our 2022 plan to collaborate with social service organizations and music and arts nonprofits. With these relationships, we root ourselves deeply by the living water of our faith. So as the prophet Jeremiah writes, our leaves stay green and we continue to grow and thrive. We extended our community with relationships throughout the Global Anglican Communion through relationships renewed and strengthened at the Lambeth Conference of Bishops. And in October, we welcomed the Reverend Canon Sarah Snyder, the Reconciliation Advisor to the Archbishop of Canterbury and founding director of Rose Castle, an international center for reconciliation, for a habits conference over a beautiful shared charcuterie board and clam chowder and hot cider prepared by our own Annie Guinan. As another step in extending our community, we completed our fundraising for our copper loop hearing system that Randy was talking about, with clearing away the poinsettias to get ready for the installation on the 30th and 31st of this month. It's happening. We're able to do this with a grant from the Diocese of Rhode Island and the incredibly generous support of the Emmanuel and the Newport Classical community. This new system will be a game changer, and it will be not only for those with hearing aids that it'll improve life, because the hearing aids connect directly through Bluetooth, but also for all of those sitting in the pews and watching at home, because in order to gather sound for the copper loop to transmit through the hearing aids, we have to have much better microphones suspended over the nave, over the chancel, and then into better speakers that are appropriately spaced with all of the electrical interference reduced. So this will be an experience that will improve for all of us, everybody's listening experience. We can also then offer the church, and I want to do a shout out to Susanna Laramie on this great idea. We can offer this space as a first choice affordable recording studio for local performance groups, which will further build our relationships in the community in our core area of music performance. I really love the Can You Hear Me Now dinner that we held in the library with our resident chefs, Annie Guinan and Emily Wigatow, celebrating our extended community and raising funds for the Copper Loop Sound Project, while we were testing a pet idea of mine, a pop-up restaurant or cafe. And I think I'd like to talk about that more over the next year. On a personal note, as you all know, 2022 has specifically been a year of extending community for Jerry and me. As both of our adult children married, and we gained 2 full additional families as part of our family in the process. And we've leaned hard into our extended community, all of us together here at Emmanuel, as we addressed my breast cancer diagnosis in the fall, and I began treatment. And this community has been just amazing. We've been carried by your prayers, by your notes, your cards, your smiles, your gifts, and your calls. The bishops and my care team's support enabled my full medical disability insurance, which has allowed us to increase Randy's hours to cover my administrative absence and to pay supply priests to enable me to rest and care for my immune system while it's suppressed from chemotherapy. On New Year's Day, I was surprised by the prayers of the whole congregation as Faye Gosling presented me with a beautiful prayer shawl knitted by so many of you, Emmanuelites and friends from our wider community. Faye sat with new knitters and old pros as they stitched row after row of squares, knitting our community together in encouragement, in solidarity and love, just as surely as we are woven into the fabric of our halo altar cloth. Every stitch, our prayer. I've often imagined your healing prayers as a mantle around my shoulders. My prayer shawl, dreamed and knitted and prayed and blessed by this community, will hold me through my healing, a warm and tangible manifestation of God's love in our community. On this third Sunday after Epiphany, and thinking of my prayer shawl, it's a good time to ask ourselves what Epiphany, or God's manifestation, means to us. We know that the Feast of the Epiphany, as the moment when God is manifest among us in the person of the new baby king. In a more common sense, Epiphany is a moment, a sudden realization when we all of a sudden realize or understand the essential nature of something. It's that moment when the light bulb goes on, when we see something we haven't noticed before. I point to my prayer shawl as such a manifestation, a visible, tangible, warm, enveloping manifestation of God's love at Emmanuel. We will look forward to 2023 as the year of manifesting community, as we celebrate and share all the ways that God's love shines out among us. Thank you.
Amen.